Baston leaving Rockland RCC, Rockland Community College. That was a bit of a jolt, I think, for those of us who were not in the know on that. But he became a beloved figure here in the county and made a lot of changes for the good at RCC, and he is moving on to Ohio. And the college is in search of an interim president. So if there's anybody out there who wants to, dust off their resumes, that's a big job, and that's open.
Any potential candidates we got listening on the station? There's your opportunity, I suppose.
For sure. It is a big opportunity.
You were talking about he's a pretty beloved figure. Was this just a retirement, just a regular retirement?
No, he's going on to a college in Ohio. I don't know if, maybe he's from there. I don't know the backstory there.
Okay.
He's moving on, but whoever does step into his shoes, I know there'll be some big shoes to follow. He was a big personality, very visible, and brought a lot of change to the college, and also navigated it through these very tumultuous years in terms of all the social change that we're grappling with, as well as the pandemic.
Right.
Also, in announcing new positions, is somebody who most of us probably don't know here in Rockland County, but I'm going to explain why his appointment, but more importantly, the organization, Historic Hudson River Towns, is important to Rockland. So a little bit of background: Historic Hudson River Towns, or HHRT, they have been around 27 years, and essentially they were established in the 90s, I guess. I hope that math worked out. When the river towns along the coast in Westchester were feeling the transition from industrial and manufacturing places to figuring out what they would become. And as any of us knows now, if you go along the river from Yonkers to Irvington, Tarrytown, Sleepy Hollow, Croton, on Hudson, Peekskill, from coast to coast along Westchester. If anybody's been around that long, you know how much those river towns have been transformed, and how old industrial buildings have now become living spaces and working spaces, and there are walking trails, and the really notable one, of course, is the old GM plant in Tarrytown. Became a mixed-use residential, commercial development with walking trails. So this organization formed to figure out a strategy to collectively put the minds together and to figure out how to transform the coast and on Westchester's side of the river, and to collectively promote that coast and have the synergy of that promotion, so that tourism, to stimulate tourism, and so that people visiting Westchester, would go from town to town and think of the entire coast potentially as a destination rather than a town-by-town basis. That organization opened its doors to Rockland County about a decade ago. And we have four important sites in Rockland County: Piermont, Nyack, Haverstraw, and Stony Point. I mentioned that we were talking about this today because somebody has been newly appointed, and that is a gentleman named Burns Patterson. And if you go to RCC's Journal this morning, you will see the story about his being appointed executive director of HHRT. So also in the news is that the village of Piermont. So Nyack and Haverstraw had already joined this organization. Mm-hmm. Piermont just very recently became part of this organization. And Stony Point, if you're listening, you gotta sign on. The way this organization works is it raises its money through fundraising, but also it's an intermunicipal agency, and so each municipality pays $3,500 a year to be part of this organization. And the point here for the Rockland side, the discussion for today is, the key word here is connectivity. So Piermont and Nyack, Haverstraw, they all have their own strengths, that they're all uniquely individual, just as the towns in Westchester are, but together they are stronger. The gestalt of they're greater than the sum of their parts. When you put them all together, you have a potential to look at Rockland as a place that also has a string of riverfront towns that could bring people to the area, and so they, spend their time sort of town hopping and seeing, the pier in Piermont and the food scene maybe in Nyack and the Brick Museum in Haverstraw. Haverstraw is worth talking about too, because here's a village, the village of Haverstraw, that is really hoping to transform itself by way of new development on an 8-acre site, the former chair factory on the water, hoping to put a hotel there by a Brooklyn group that does hotel development. And the Brick Museum is potentially hoping to expand and take some of its operations also down to the waterfront, which is in fact where brick making actually started. So the thing is that, Rockland is a little bit, struggles more than its sister across the street, Westchester, across the river, but we have these river assets. And true, we don't have a train, which is kind of, that's one thing I think that makes Westchester easier. But if there's some entrepreneur out there, they might figure out that some sort of a village by village coastal transport might be an interesting, weekend side, gig to do, because if there's an opportunity for people again to come up and visit the different villages, through the course of the day, and they can be themed, like pub crawls or art crawls or food, food tours or what have you. So, so we're looking at, waiting to see, how this helps Piermont, which recently joined. And, one interesting thing about the joining of Piermont is we spoke with Mayor Bruce Tucker on this. Of course, he thinks this is an excellent thing. But this came to his attention by way of their Historic Society, and also has been funded through their Rockland County tourism grants, which Rockland, the county gives out, of course, every year, and we cover that. So, can't say enough really about how important tourism is, and we have these assets here in the county. And again, this organization, HHRT, they've been doing good work for a long time. And they also, just one last thing about them is they do also have, an environmental bent too, and they seek to protect the ecosystem of the river, which again is very important for, everything, for tourism, for kayaking, for fishing, for everything.
Do you believe that the recent limitations and restrictions that have been implemented in some towns post the incident that happened in Clarkstown a while ago impede upon this organization's efforts in terms of increasing tourism here in the county?
That is a very good question. And when I was speaking with Burns, I raised the same issue to him. I asked him if he had been aware of this. I do think it does tamp down a bit, but if my memory serves me right, we have not seen that in these particular villages. In fact, it's in these villages where we have not seen that sort of, rush to shut down on Airbnb and short-term rentals. So I think, I think that those villages are protecting their tourism opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think, yeah, I mean, I've not been shy to say this all along, that, Airbnb is it's an established practice. Yes, that was an unfortunate incident in Clarkstown, but I think it is an important component of tourism. And I think, if I'm recalling correctly, there was no rush to do this not in Piermont, Nyack, definitely not in the village of Haverstraw. I specifically remember quoting Mayor Cohut on that. Stony Point, however, yeah, they were actually the first to ban short-term rentals. So, I mean, and they also are not yet part of, or may not be part of this organization, but really, they should think about it. They should think about the connectivity of our coastal, our riverfront towns.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe there's a possibility that with further reflection they could end up reversing the decisions if it shows to be impeding upon tourism efforts, increasing tourism efforts in the future?
That would take a lot of doing.
Yeah, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
I think that once you get, sort of politicians vested in a certain position, and then a law passes, although, we certainly, we do see, we see flexibility. You make a good point. I mean, we see flexibility where it makes sense. I'm going to be putting out a story later this week, in fact, about something called the TOD, the Transit-Oriented Development. That's the commercial area around Nanuet that Clarkstown spent 10 years attempting to rezone so that it could stimulate development. Well, here's just a preview. Even after 10 years, and they codified that law, when reality hit and there were some needs at hand, they've gone back to the drawing board, and there's a public hearing coming up in June where they're going to massage those laws, and this will all be explained in my story this week. Mm-hmm. But my point being, and your point being, is when you put the theory into reality, and there's an overwhelming need to satisfy, in this case, development. Suddenly the laws are flexible. Unfortunately, the thing around the short-term rental thing is that it was an emotional. There was partly an emotional element because here in quiet Clarkstown we had an incident that involved gunfire, and that was very unhinging and disturbing. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. But tourism, Rockland County, there's no reason why we can and should not take advantage of our assets. I still believe that people are, despite the gas prices, are really interested in driving a lot more than they are flying around, and that local tourism, that this is a really good opportunity, good moment for local tourism, and anything that the county can do to catch up to Westchester. We don't have the train, but I would say that Rockland has so much beauty that, we have the assets, and people always want to recreate and be near bodies of water. The Hudson, it's an iconic river. Mm-hmm. So we need to use those assets, and this organization is just one engine to help achieve that. So.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly makes sense, and I imagine people want to drive, even though the gas prices are so up, not only because, that's it. I guess road trips are nice, and traveling like that is a lot of fun. But, of course, for a while, it seemed like every week, for a few weeks, just last month, there was a new freak out on an airplane, mainly JetBlue for some reason, but there was a new, incident. It might even not be the passenger's fault at the time, but there was every week there was a new incident. So yeah, driving may be a little bit more peaceful, I suppose.
Especially summer coming around the corner.
Yeah, it was summer coming around. That might be and summer. Pools obviously
get a lot of visits from.
A lot of tourists that way as well. Of course, thank you so much, Tina Traster, for joining us as you do every Monday at this time. If you want more information on Rockland business, you could of course visit their website, RCBiz. That's BIZ, RCBizJournal.com, or go to their Facebook page, Rockland County Business Journal. We thank you, Tina Traster, again for joining us this fine Monday morning. We hope you have a great week, and we'll speak to you next week. If not before then, have a great one.
You too, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Tina.